Nancy, you're very welcome to the ScaleX Insider podcast. I am delighted and thrilled to have you on the show today.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
You're very, very welcome, and it really is great to have you on. Look, we've been sharing off air. You know, our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium sized businesses to scale
Mhm.
with purpose. So, what does scaling with purpose mean to you, Nancy?
Yeah, and our vision is to transform how a million people communicate. And it's interesting. We have values about scaling, like we will not scale faster than the quality, or we will always choose our reputation over revenue. And so we just worked on what we called our guarantee. Like, what is it that we do to really live that out? And so what scaling looks like to us is that we call ourselves dwartians. I don't know. I didn't make the name up, but it's kind of cute.
Love that.
So our guarantee is that by working with Dwartians, there will be a transfer of skill and knowledge, to the other person. And so part of that, which helps their career, right? And so we also will always promise to delight you because we will choose our outcomes over profit every time. And that's kind of a gutsy promise, but we don't want to ever leave an engagement where they didn't walk away advanced in their career and feeling like what they got from us was the value.
Can I ask, following from that, how do you measure that? How do you measure your impact?
Yeah, it's interesting. How do you measure that a million people were transformed too, right? It's a little bit elusive. And getting to scale is an interesting it's been an interesting challenge. Like organizations hit something called a Dunbar number. When you hit about 100 employees, it's almost like it has to divide into like a cell structure. And so we did have a galvanizing vision of this, transform how a million people communicate. And we had to decide, well, if they go through a workshop and they apply it, which a certain percent do, then we could take this many people go through this many workshops and then they apply it in the real world. And because what we do is based in empathy, based in story, we measure it also based on the quality of the testimonials or when people fill out the surveys. What is the nature of the language they're using? And is it transformative in nature? Do they say, I got a new job, I got promoted, my cause got more funding? Like those, some people might call that qualitative data, but we call that impact. And so there is, when you're transforming the human heart, is that measurable? And so we've had to kind of build specific ways to say it was a win.
Well, I love your vision, and it's very aligned to our own in terms of inspiring, connecting, enabling millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium sized enterprise to
Mm,
scale with purpose. You have a wonderful line. The future isn't a place we're going to go, it's a
yeah,
place we're going to create. I absolutely love that. You follow on with that and go, we all have the power to change the
yeah,
world. Tell
yeah.
me about this.
Yeah, the ability to see the future, everyone can kind of do it or anticipate the future. I've been doing this now since 1988, so I'm quite an old hack at this. And it started as simple things like we would sit down and say, like, we really need a dot matrix printer, or we really need a 600 megabyte hard drive. Might be the only hard drive we ever need in our entire business. So it used to be this list of goals, like of acquiring things that we needed to have for the next year. But now that we've been doing this for so long, every year in November, first week of November, I used to go alone away and dream about, this is what I see, and I could kind of pretty accurately, oddly, paint a picture for, this is where we need to be in the future. Like literally everyone listening to this, your customers are going to have a different sentiment. They're going to have more competitive opportunities to you in 18 months. So I look at 18-month time horizons, and you should be able to kind of see relatively clearly what's happening in the next 18 months. And that transformation of who you need to be in 18 months will not happen without the help of a vision, without you articulating, like, we're here, but we need to go there. And it is a dream phase. Like, it's this dreaming where you're like, I have this dream. And then if you convey that dream really well, people will jump in, they'll leap in, and they'll commit to your dream. And that the power of taking something that's invisible and making it visible and being at the right place in the future where your customers are, it's the only thing that'll make your business sustainable. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I noticed that my visions, or these casting of where we need to be in the longer future, in about 4 years out, they happen about every 4 or 5 year increments. And at least in the US Bureau of Labor and Statistics, it states that most small businesses fail within 4 to 5 years. Now, a lot of times it's due to partnership, but a lot of times it's due to lack of vision and lack of shared vision and lack of adapting. Because a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to do this and I'll do the same thing for 20 years. And no, you can't. If you think you're going to be status quo and that you get to just hit go, and that you don't have to adapt or change, then you don't have a living, breathing organization. So,
Something I want to pick up there, your stats resonate with the stats quoted by Dr. Oleg Konovalov. He's an expert in visioneering, has written countless
mm,
books on visioneering. Wonderful guy. I interviewed him in some of the earlier seasons, and he said less than 1% of small and medium-sized business leaders actually have a vision for the future. Now, I think lots
wow,
have, but actually there's a fear of articulating that. I want, just before we get into that, to understand a little bit more about practically what you do to put yourself into that dream state. So you mentioned,
mhm,
one of the things you do is that you go away.
yeah,
But what do you do when you go away? Have you a list of questions that you're asking yourself? Um, have you a place that you go to? What does that look like, so that actually, for our listeners who are coming to this for the first time, you can support them with some practical ways of
I
actually
love
getting
that.
themselves into this dream state?
I love that. So we do now. I mean, when we were smaller, I literally would go away to the Best Western in Carmel, and they had a little fireplace, and I could go on a walk, and then I would come back and I would just write by hand or put sticky notes all over the place and think about what needs to be fixed and what is the opportunity. So I have this mental model of, there's an ancient text in the book of Nehemiah where he had this deadline and had to build a wall, and he had to build it really fast. And what he did is, all of the workers, they built the wall with a trowel in one hand. Some say it might have been a hammer. They built it with a trowel in one hand and a sword in the other. So every time I do a vision, it has an offensive move of building and a defensive move of protecting. And so that's always been, okay, what do I do? What needs to be cleaned up? What needs to be fixed? What's broken? Who's the competitor? So for a long time, I didn't have any sort of significant competitor at scale. So I had to make up this scrappy young MBA person who was just going to gobble up our lunch. And I would show up in these vision meetings, and they're just like, what, why are you so like, I wouldn't talk about this fake competitor, but I would be like, why are you so amped up when we're so far ahead of the competition, But I was just always feeling like, it's a race. It's just always a race. So I would go to Carmel by myself. And that was a bit like Moses going to the top of the mountain, coming down with the tablets, right? And so we got to a place of maturity where now my team, not just my exec team, but now we have another layer of a leadership team too. And what we do is we do some pretty heavy listening. So we do customer interviews, we read the market, we go look at competitors, we'll listen to earning calls of our customers, which we do that all year long. And then we have internal listening surveys, a Glint survey, and we take that. So this is like insights being fed to us. But things are moving so rapidly right now with AI and the moves, the agility I need right now. We're actually setting up a specific market listening channel at the company, and we're actually going in and asking every employee. We're doing it in January. We're going to model and we're going to mimic, and we're going to have them recognize, oh my gosh, you're right. I heard a market insight, or I heard a competitive insight, or I heard the market actually ask for something, but I would not have noticed it if you hadn't told me that I had permission to report to you exactly what I'm hearing the market request from Duarte. Because we're having to be like little tiny right now, itty bitty move, like a 2-degree turn, is going to have us land in a completely different location in 3 years. So that's what we're doing. It's like we're going to do tact, 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 tact fast for the next 3 or 4 months, where I'm getting feeds like every day. First thing I'm going to do is listen to like what my employees are hearing from the market, because I feel like this next strategic move needs to be risky and surgical all at the same time. It's just this sense like I don't know. I feel like I'm going for a long time, but I want to say one more thing. As leaders, it's our job, it's a requirement that we be scouts. We're supposed to live between the known and the unknown, which is a scary precipice to be at, but we're supposed to be right on the edge, looking for danger, looking for opportunity. It's like we're the park ranger in the tall, elevated little, and we're looking for smoke, but we're also looking for opportunity. And I think your statistic isn't that surprising, but in a way is, I do think it's really cool that you've kind of chosen that as this thing to focus on, because that statistic is bleak, that people can't at least anticipate the future. And even though I do long 3, 4, people should have a 6-month plan of where we're headed, why we're headed there. Then you communicate it in a way that creates longing in the employees to help you get there. So it's astounding to me. That's why I think I went on a little longer
No, it's really
than
important,
you
and
wanted.
I love this because when I ask those scaling leaders who come into our community, what does great look like in 3 years' time? If we were sitting down here and you told me that the last 3 years has been professionally the best in your entire career, why is that so? And the vast majority of people really struggle to convey why that is. So they'll look at the past and go, well, I think if we do this and this, we might be able to do this. And they kind of think linearly. Uh, those those who do articulate with passion where they want to go, I say, okay, and who have you communicated this to? And say, well, nobody. I go, well, uh, how can you expect anyone to be inspired then to get behind what you're trying to do? You've said, and I love that, when you convey that dream effectively, people will jump in. And you've built a career and a wonderful organization around supporting people in conveying this effectively. So I'd love to get into that. What does conveying your vision effectively look like?
Yeah. Now we are a presentation company, and I'm the presentation lady. So my audience is full of people who are expecting me to really kill a presentation. So conveying
It's a
it
lot of pressure.
effectively, yeah, no kidding. It's like you have no idea. Anyway, so it's loaded with some skeptics. And plus, what's different, right, is I get paid to speak, and people are like lapping up everything I say. But the minute I stand up in front of my employees, they're like, "Uh-oh, she's going to ask me to do something. She's going to have me stretch, or we have this new thing." So what visioning looks like, is we usually establish what needs to happen around November, and then we actually work on messaging in December. It's a big deal because when we nail, we do a January kickoff. It's called a DKO, which is a Duarte kickoff meeting, and we kick off the next year. Doing that well sets the tone for the whole year, and we've noticed it just makes it slick on execution when we do that. So what we do is, we have the executive team kind of does a framing document of what we think the vision talk will be. And then we have the next layer of leadership come in and help shape it and say, look, you're going to say this and it's going to really distress this department, or you're going to do this and you're going to see this kind of resistance. And so we get this kind of a listening slash shaping. And then by doing that is there's buy-in at that level of leadership. And then they feel they have like a little bit of skin in the game, so that when they get questions, or when they get like it gets challenged, they'll help represent the intent behind it. So then we cascade it all year long, associated with the vision. You can have a vision all day long, but if you don't have goals, and then it's right when the vision's done, it's all broken down. We go into breakouts, and every leader has the goals of the team that is very clearly articulated what they are going to do to help us reach this goal. And then that's managed as performance management, like all year long, as goals. We did a we had the vision of transforming 1 million lives. I delivered that January 20th of 2020. And that was like the same week, like it was getting all over the news that COVID was coming. We did such a great job with that vision because it was this dreamy, aspirational, it had a lot of meaning in it. We did such a great job that like a glee club formed and sang about the vision. Like it was like 100% buy-in, right? Buy-in, the most glorious, beautiful buy-in. We broke into breakouts. We told stories. We dreamed about what the future is going to be like to be at scale. It was just amazing. And now we're still kind of trapped in this external pressure. And you think about this kind of rocket ship to the moon that we launched. We're like, this is a moonshot goal. A rocket has incredible external pressure or it'll implode, right? I'm sorry, did I snort laugh a little? It's a bit, that kind of pressure has challenged our resolve. It's challenged me as a leader. We've made mistakes over the last few years, but we've also been under incredible external pressure. And I love how my team has showed up. I love how my company has showed up. I love how my employees showed up. I love how they're still committed to this dream. And they're like, please, help us taste it again this year. We're just desperate to really believe we're going to be able to do it. And that's the power in one of these kind of moonshot goals. Now, people sometimes will say, my goal is to make $1 million or whatever. Like a small business can't set that as a goal. It has to be a goal that creates human flourishing in some way, because everybody will rally around human flourishing, helping someone flourish. And that's what creates meaning in the vision. So I've done it well. I've messed it up. And this one's high stakes, right? We've got unexpected pressure in this year, but we're going to try to go big. We're going to try to grow. And
I love this creative vision that ultimately supports human flourishing in some
mhm,
way.
mhm.
For some of our listeners, they might say, well, that's fine, but that all seems a little bit abstract. But ultimately,
Huh.
the ingredients to conveying an idea with impact are the same, given kind of my research of your work, which is incredible in terms of like mapping the different high profile speeches that have been made across the globe, from Martin Luther King to Steve Jobs. And there is a pattern here to conveying a story. Can you share with our listeners, Nancy, like the art of actually crafting their story? And a lot of people will be coming to this, go, well, I'm not a storyteller, I'm not,
Yeah.
I've got this idea, but they don't associate themselves with a person like Steve Jobs or Martin Luther King. But I suppose a big part of your message is we all have that power. It's just
Yeah.
really unlocking that. So tell me more about that and how we can go about practically structuring the articulation of our vision such that it lands addressing the fact that actually human flourishing should be a thread which runs through
Yeah.
this, regardless of what business you're in.
I love that question. The structure that I found after analyzing hundreds of speeches was that the greatest communicators use contrast. The thing we love about story is this rise and fall, and the story kind of rises, it builds intention, and then there's this cathartic release. And I noticed that the greatest speeches had this kind of to and fro, or this rise and fall, but they weren't telling a story. It wasn't like it was a Marvel movie. It was a speech, And so there was this kind of this breathing in and breathing out and a rhythm that I wanted to identify. And I found that what it is it's contrast. So what you do is you state what currently is, and then you state this desirable future state. And then it's what is, and then what could be in this future state. What is, what could be, as a structural device. So start with what is, move to what could be, what is, what could be, what could be, what is, what could be. And then at the end, you state what we call the new bliss. And this is your ending should be the way the world is going to look if the audience adopts your idea. What is this blissful future state that's going to happen if they make this vision come true? And they all follow this shape. And they do choose beautiful words. Um, there's visceral reactions in the audience. They're laughing, they're clapping, they're marveling. Like there's this visceral reaction, all based on this construct, but also based on the words that are chosen of how great this future state is.
What would you say to the SME leader who, is running a wood shop, has a desire to scale,
Yeah.
has 25 people working for them, maybe second generation, and they have a desire to to really scale the impact of what they're doing in the context of they're creating wonderful products. They know that they could take this to a wider audience, but they're fearful of doing so. And they say, well, I hear you guys talking about Martin Luther King, but that's all a little bit abstract in the context of my world. What would you say to them? What appeal would you make to them
Yeah,
in
I
your
love that. Gosh, I it works. I can get my husband to do chores for me on the weekend using this persuasive structure.
Tell me more about this,
So,
because I feel I'm maybe being manipulated at home.
no, um, I love that you even picked somebody that does woodworking. My brother-in-law happens to do that, and so I to maybe make it feel more tangible, I'll just pretend that he's the one asking me. And what he does is he does these amazing, like beautiful staircases where you're like, how do you bend wood to do that? And so he's got that. And then he also takes all the reclaimed wood, all the leftover hardwoods, and turns it into, cutting boards. He's beautiful. His artistry,
Oh,
like
I
his like
love this.
real artistry. And so what's interesting is there's a few ways that, it's interesting. I was just talking to him about, not only how do you scale, but what he does is sustainable and it's green. And it hadn't even occurred to him. He's just doing it from his passion. And I'm, look, you're Hispanic, you're a minority owned green business that's really creating this beautiful you tool, like it's a
Yeah.
utility, these cutting boards. And so I think that what happens is that there's um, certain kinds of woodworking arrests you, and it creates awe, and creating awe in a human in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is transcendence. Like there's all kinds of ways that you can say there's human flourishing, and maybe that's a great go-to tool. Like, are you creating safety, security, housing, like shelter? Are what is it? Where is it in the quest to self-actualization or even transcendence? Where in there do you live? Does your product live? And the other thing that's really interesting is a mindset, an empathy first mindset towards your customers. So what this woodworking metaphor or business model that you're talking about is, when you're making something, sometimes it comes from a place of passion. So you look at it from your own perspective, but they need to flip their perspective and say, well, wait a minute, how does this product or how does my company get someone else unstuck? Like the people that you're shipping your product to, they're the hero of their own story. You're the mentor. You're the one that's like, I'm going to ship this woodworking project to this customer and they're going to be unstuck. They're going to be enlightened. What's going to happen in their world when you insert your product, you insert your service? So we do this day in the life storytelling where it's like, okay, my customer wakes up in the morning. What's the first thing they do? And then they do this, then they do this, and then insert my product into their life. And suddenly their world has changed like this, and you got to think about how they use it and how it benefits them. That's where the flourishing happens, is your product is received by them and their lives changed because they received it from you. And so that's a visioning exercise that Walt Disney used. Brian Chesky used it at Airbnb. You could look up Brian Chesky and Snow White, and it'll come up. Disney and Snow White. Nobody believed that Disney could make a movie 100% a cartoon. And so they worked all day on something. And if I remember it correctly, he took them all to dinner and said, hey, come back. I want to show you something. And they all piled into an auditorium. And Disney himself freaking acted out the entire Snow White movie in front of him, acted the whole thing out on a stage so they could catch his vision. And that's amazing. Like, that's so powerful.
I,
So powerful.
that is so profound. There's so much value in that. I've never heard the importance of visioneering in the context of anchoring to a purpose in relation to human flourishing,
Mhm.
mapped to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I absolutely love that. That is so powerful. Every single company leader listening
Yeah.
to this, every single person out there will be solving a problem or servicing a need that can be mapped somewhere to Maslow's
Yeah.
hierarchy of needs. That is
Yep.
so powerful. Um,
Hmm.
there's a number of things I want to pick up on. The the fear of speaking publicly. I feel there's a raft of leaders out there who do have a vision for what the future could be, but are stuck with the fear of, well, communicating that publicly. Number one, I think glossophobia is the fear of public speaking. It's a fear
Yeah.
worse than
It's a real
death.
thing.
It's a
Hmm.
real thing. We know that anyone who has ever got up on stage to speak publicly, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
The how can leaders get over this? Because you've mentioned that, you know, in the context of actually stepping into the shoes of the customer, you know, you're a mentor, you're the Yoda to the Luke Skywalker. And I've
Hmm.
said to leaders before who have come into our community, you need to get over yourself, because it's not about you, it's about your team and
Yeah.
what you're denying them by not communicating your vision.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend practically to those leaders listening who have this harbored desire to do something great, but a dreaded fear of communicating this?
Yeah. There's some people who are like, "Oh, I'll get up on the stage, I'll nail it," and they have no fear, right? And those are the ones I think that you should be more scared of, right? Where they don't even care enough to plan. They just think you can stand up and wing it. I'll just like throw, it's January, I don't know, I'll just throw something out there. It's the ones who are actually nervous and scared that have more powerful things to say. And it's almost like if they can get over the fear, and there's things you could do for that, but get over the anxiety. The ones that are a little more nervous, they shape their words more carefully. It's more thoughtfully prepared. Like, if you can get my husband to speak, he's actually a better I get voted guru. And my husband's like, "Baby, I think you forgot a verb, and I think you forgot a noun in that sentence right there," right? Because I'm just like, blah, 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 quick, quick, quick. So what has to happen is one of the things that'll help is just resolve. I have an important message that needs to be told, and I need to tell it. So there's sometimes a reason why a vision or a dream lands in your heart. Like there were a whole lot of people who could have been Dr. King, but there was only one Dr. King. So there's a few things you need to learn to do. One of them is to be empathetic. Once you really empathize for the people you're talking to, some of the fear goes away. The fear is actually the fight or flight instinct, because you feel like when I stand in front of these people, I'm at risk. I'm threatened. There's like, I'm prey to some predator. There's a predator in the audience and I am their prey. So your brain starts to take over. So one of the things that the one tip I could kind of anchor this on is to figure out what your pre-talk ritual. I mean, once you've planned, you're comfortable with your material, you've empathized with your audience. What you need to do is you need to maybe do like a pre-talk ritual if you're super nervous or you have anxiety. Um, some people need to calm themselves down. I need to do that. I'm over the top energetic. So I pick a corner, I visualize myself delivering it. I visualize myself saying the right words, because I do tend to leave nouns and verbs out. And then other people need to like put on heavy metal and skip around the building or whatever to get themselves pumped up, to make them feel brave. So for me, I need to make myself feel calm. Other people need to make themselves feel brave. Whatever is that you do to make you feel brave, go and do that.
And,
And so go
and
ahead.
where
Yeah,
should your
Brendan.
mindset be so that you know, the importance of being empathetic
Yeah.
when you're going through that visualization routine? Do you imagine yourself delivering, or do you think about being somebody in the audience who's receiving your message? Is there a mental lens by which we should adopt prior to actually delivering?
Yeah.
or
I
vision?
love that question. So what I've done in the past is I'll sit in different seats in the audience and look at the stage, imagine them receiving my message, and then wherever I sit, I'll tend to look there in that area, look at that person like that happens to choose that seat, just because I know I sat there, I sat in their seat, and I imagined what it would be like to receive the message. That's one way to do it. There's all kinds of other ways. One of the things you can do is if you have one or two trusted people, I don't know how big some of these companies are, but run the message by them and then say, attack me. Like, tell me the worst, the most obscure, bizarre reaction someone would have to, just the most bizarre reaction, no matter how bizarre or angry, like someone completely entrenched that hates me, hates the idea. And then they just throw those at you. And then what happens is by the time you walk on stage, you have heard it. You're not going to hear anything surprising. But the other thing is, when these people start to say these things, you're like, you know what? I should address that. That's a really viable fear. Oh my gosh, I had not ever considered someone in the audience might think that way or feel that way or see that thing. And then what you could do is you can implant that kind of resistance into your time. Hey, I bet some of you are feeling like this and you're thinking like that and you're considering this. Let me address that really quick because I really care. Like it comes across like that. And I think it's just really important to have addressed all of the way an audience might feel or think about your idea.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and it reminds me of a process adopted by one of our participants who had shared their vision to their entire company. There's 60 in the company, and they're lean practitioners, so they run morning meetings, and their morning meetings are typically 15, 20 minutes long. And for a course of months, they invited, a team member to read a piece from their vision and
Oh, nice.
interpret what that meant to them, positive or negative. And it was really interesting because they were announcing a new facility and very excited about this. It was going to increase their capacity to manufacture, which was going to enable them to, take their products and services to a wider audience. And this person said, this really scares me because I love working here and I don't want to
Oh,
move, 15 miles down the road. I really enjoy coming here and enjoy the people in this building, and I don't want to go there.
oh,
So, I this isn't exciting for me. I'm really anxious about actually moving elsewhere. And they were able to address that straight off and said, no, we're going to recruit new team members. They're going to be located in the new facility. We're going to accommodate those who want to move up, but those who want to stay, can remain here. But it's funny how our interpretation of the vision, which is growth and expansion and challenge, and can be interpreted by somebody else as change, which causes anxiety. So I
yeah,
think just
yeah.
sharing that and taking that different perspective is really, really powerful in terms of
It
what
can
you're.
be unsettling, and you'd be surprised if you'd only chosen four different words in the talk. It could
Yeah.
have made it not be unsettling, but you can't address every single thing on everyone's mind. But I love that. I love that idea of coming back to the vision and dealing with any resistance or anxiety. Oh, that's smart.
Just staying on that theme of presenting your story.
Mhm.
What are the do's and don'ts? You've built a career in terms of advising people about the do's and don'ts of presentations. For those listening, everybody will be familiar with constructing a PowerPoint probably about 15 minutes before they have to go into a meeting with very little practice. So what are some of the absolutes and absolute nots?
Yeah, for pulling together a presentation.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that absolute is empathy, like quickly. That and even something like empathy, like you were saying, it's 15 minutes before a meeting, you're pulling something together. But you know what? Maybe it doesn't need to be a PowerPoint. Maybe you think and you just draw a diagram. You're like, you know what? This is an anchoring graphic. I'm going to go into this meeting and I'm going to draw this graphic up on the whiteboard, and it's going to anchor my entire message. Like the weird thing is that we had a well, I can't say the brand, but a well, top five Fortune 5, the one who ran India, all of the head of India was going to come and ask the US CEO for $100 million for a project, and called us, okay, I need 5 slides. And we're like, you're going to use 5 slides? You're going to actually be in the presence of this person, and you're going to use 5 slides? And that's when we were like, no, just let's get 3 grounding graphics. You just go to the whiteboard, but you grab a piece of paper, you just look them in the eye, like you look at them in the eye. You don't, so you have to think through, like, empathetically. I was working with another friend where they were trying to win this project, and to win the project, they had to paint the vision for this project. And so they called and were like, what do you think? And I said, I don't think you spent enough time thinking about who you're talking to. Like, how do they receive information? Like, what is he like? And so they ended, because I said, what if he's going to read it as printed out papers on an airplane? They're like, oh my God, that's exactly how he works. I'm going to print out 11 by 17 pieces of color, mail FedEx it before his next flight. And then that's how they, like, everyone just does things differently. So that's the first thing, is empathy. Second thing is, a lot of people fuss about the slides before they fuss about the strategy and the message. So I would say that the message trumps slides every time. So the message and delivery are first, slides are third, actually. Now, when you're on a stage and the room is skinned and it's your TED moment, then you got to have some like really amazing slides. But in reality, what happens is we created a term called a slide doc. So there's slides, which are what you project on a stage, and there's slide docs. Slide docs are used almost as the currency of business. It's enough prose and enough visuals to get an idea across, where you don't need the help of a presenter to actually verbalize it, because you've got complete sentences in this slide doc. So for the people on the call, you can just go to slide doc or slidedocs.com, and it'll roll to this great place where you have templates that are gorgeously designed. You just have to go in and change the colors to your brand, and you've got these beautiful slide docs that you could use for your sales enablement. You could use them for your proposals. You could use them. It's beautiful. It's like modular collateral is what it is for internal and external communications. But the deal is, you need to know, wait, am I delivering a visual document, or am I delivering a presentation? And then stay away from that messy middle, where the density of the slides, it's not really quite a presentation, but it's not really quite a slide doc. We encourage our customers, and they do it. They have 2, these are big multinational companies. They have 2 versions of their deck. They have a slide doc template, and then they have the staged template for when you stand and deliver a talk. And those 2 things are very, very different. And I think that's one of the other big mistakes: lack of empathy and lack of using the right template and tool for the right use.
Sage advice. I'm going to take a hard pivot here, because I feel our listeners will listen to you and go, my God, I'd love to be able to communicate like Nancy. I'd love to have Nancy's confidence. I'd love to have Nancy's competence. Clearly, Nancy's, Harvard trained. She's got a communications coach, I suspect, all of that good stuff. Can you share a little bit of your own story and why what you're doing means so much to you, and why people listening should really listen to you and be brave to share their own story?
Oh, Brendan, I really appreciate this. The Harvard trained, no. Yeah, I was raised in an economically and emotionally starved environment by a narcissistic mother, and narcissism is painful for a kid, and it took me a long time to understand. It wasn't until I was an adult that I understood that a narcissist is missing the empathy gene. So that's why my drumbeat is empathy, empathy, empathy. I didn't have it modeled for me, and by the time I left home, I had to build constructs in my mind so that I could be empathetic. So all I wanted was to be out of the house. Mom left when I was 16. I raised my siblings. I went to 1 year of university at University of Southern Mississippi. I took speech communication, which is, I always thought I would love to do that. And I got a C minus, and I got a D in English. And now I write books in English about speech communication. But it was like a scarlet letter. Like it just felt horrible. to have had that. So I did what any reasonable young girl does in this particular state. I got married when I was 18. Fortunately, married the man of my dreams. We moved to a small town in Northern California called Chico, California, and we went into the ministry. And I was there for 3 years. I had a local job. It was the only tech company there. So when my husband decided he was going to come down here to the Bay Area to school. I got a job at a tech company super easily, really easily. And interestingly, he filled out little ads in the little newspaper, and we bought a Mac Plus for him to do his papers on, and he started doing desktop publishing and illustrations, but he got carpal tunnel. I joined him right away. I mean, at the beginning of the business, and he let me take it over, which was super nice. He's still involved a little bit, does finance and stuff, but what's interesting about the long narrative of this is here I am, high school degree, 1 year of college. And I just come down here to the Bay Area, lifelong learner. I read every copy of HBR, every copy of Entrepreneur Magazine, every copy of Inc. Magazine, every strategy and marketing book that would come out and were published. I read them all. So I would show up into these meetings with these CEOs. So Apple was our first customer, and they were the first to project from a computer. Now, up until then, we had a 35 millimeter imager. Like, we did whatever it took, and we put every penny. We lived in a dump. We lived in a dump. Gross yellow shag carpet dump. One room. My daughter, actually, her bed was our couch in our one bedroom, one room studio. And we made all kinds of sacrifice to buy a $17,000 35 millimeter slide imaging machine so we could have slides for people to go up on stages with. So it wasn't like you make all these sacrifices, invest. Not one time, Brendan, did anyone ask me where I got my degree from. I would just walk in the room and start telling CEOs what to say. Just the scrappy, uneducated, with a lot of moxie, man. And at 20 years in, Cisco adopted me as a protege through their diverse supplier program, and they were like, "We really want to invest in you." And they're like, "Hey, we have this partnership with UCLA," and they actually paid. They supplemented me getting my MBA from UCLA. They represented me. They accepted my 20 years of business success as my undergrad, and then I got MBA. So I skipped my undergrad, but oddly, that was like this weird hole in my heart. I did the whole, you're a poser, you're going toe to toe with Stanford MBAs, Harvard MBAs, Berkeley, blah, 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 and I was just posing the whole time. So that um, slowed down the chatter in my head quite a bit, to get that. And so to this day, like, it's so interesting that my HBR book is the most popular guidebook HBR's ever had. They just told me like in a decade, it's our best-selling guidebook we've ever had. And I'm not worthy, but man, I'm committed and have moxie and love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. And I've learned things in my life that I think other people can learn from. And so, um, it's been a long haul, and it's been fun. And my children it's hard to be an entrepreneur and your kids turn out. It's hard to be passionate and caught up in that. Now I've got my little grandsons, and I do think that life deals us situations, and how we respond to them is what shapes us. So even this last season that the company's been in, every company's been in for the last 3-4 years, it's under pressure that your values show. It's under pressure that the ugly parts come out. And that's what's interesting, is my life has been full of these high pressure moments. And if they hadn't happened, the trajectory of my life would be very different. Then thank goodness they did happen to me, and that pressure shaped me into who I became.
Oh, Nancy, I'm so glad I asked that question. Thank you for sharing that. It
Uh,
reminds me of a quote. I believe it's from James Allen's 1903 classic, As a Man Thinketh, that challenging situations don't make us, they reveal who we are. So I'm
oh,
I'm really,
love that.
really glad that I'm not glad that you had to withstand those challenges, but ultimately it's given me the opportunity to interview the lady across from me today, because without those challenges, we probably
Yeah.
wouldn't be having these conversations. So thank you for sharing that. And it goes back and it speaks loudly to the very first principle of scaling, which is psyche, which is
Yeah.
that your
Mm.
belief system, your own self story, and
Hmm.
the fact that you silence the chatter,
Yeah.
that's so critically important, because every person listening to this today will have an inner voice, and that inner voice, as Dr. Jim Lear shared in this podcast, the the tone and content of that inner voice will ultimately determine the quality of our lives. And for you to be able to kind of silence that chatter, and
Yeah.
the irony now that you're not this Harvard graduate, you've got the best-selling book within the Harvard collection. I love that. I'm rooting for you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Look, I'm conscious of time. Before we move into our close, is there anything in what we've spoken about that you feel we've missed, or you want to just add before we move into our close?
Oh, that's very sweet. I think empathy, empathy, empathy. The other thing I do, being an entrepreneur is hard and it's not for the weak, and it comes with a lot of responsibility. And I write like a rally cry to myself every year too. Like, you've got this, you were born for this. And I do appreciate that it kind of ended on that kind of psyche note of surround yourself with community, with networks, with people who will challenge you, people who know you. I'm in a couple of groups and we just kind of get in a room and we just kind of boss each other around. If I was you, I would this. If I was you, I would that. Or it's so interesting to hear from some of my CEO friends introduce me to someone else, because it's so much more beautiful than how I think of myself or what I say about myself. Like, I don't volunteer to others these really beautiful parts of myself or things I've accomplished. It's like almost embarrassing. And so it's like just listen to what other people think about you. It helps.
Yeah.
Anyway, I appreciate that. I love your I love the arc and the narrative of this conversation, Brendan. It lights my world. Like, I love talking about vision and communicating it.
Well, thank you for engaging with it. It's been an absolute pleasure, real privilege to speak with you today. I've been when I launched this podcast, what, 2.5 years ago, you were somebody I have you carried over, and from season to season to season. So I'm going to get Nancy on this season. It's taken me 2.5 years, so I'm glad I persisted, given the incredibly experience rich life that you've lived
Mm.
and continue to live. Can you share with our audience 3 timeless takeaways?
Yeah, in life or presenting.
As you wish.
As I wish. I think I'll give you like 3 tips around presenting that are really important. One is empathy. One is take the time to think through how you're going to visualize something in an empathy first way. Don't just go for the first cheesy, terrible cliche metaphor, because your competitors will too, and you'll get a lot of eye rolls. And then work on your delivery. So even though people consider me an accomplished communicator, I quote hire my own coaches. I literally book time with my world-class coaches, and before I deliver a talk, they coach me. Like, I just had that done. I just made a video and my coach literally put, I know you, Nancy, slow down right here because you're going to want to be going too fast right here. Like, have a coach in life. And that's my tips around presenting in life and in entrepreneurship. It's that it's really difficult, and sometimes you need to make decisions every day that are really, really tough, and how you communicate those decisions is going to make or break whether people follow you. When I say people, I'm talking employees and I'm talking customers. It's the companies that make the tough decisions and communicate them well, that will bust through those growth barriers that stop so many small businesses. So um, I wish everyone luck in your visioning process, and that you could articulate this future dream state in such a beautiful way that people long to follow you.
Ah, that's so beautiful. Nancy, thank you again for sharing your time, your wonderful energy, and your wisdom with us today. If people want to connect with you, and we will put links to your work, we'll signpost people to your incredible TEDx talks. More than well, almost 1 million people have viewed one of those. We'll put links to all of that and anything else you would wish us to share. But if people want to connect with you directly, where best to reach you?
Thank you. Well, Duarte.com/resources is a bunch of free materials. I think slide docs should be up there. So it's Duarte.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn. It's Nancy Duarte. I'm on Twitter at Nancy Duarte. Company handle is at Duarte on Twitter. And then we're also up on LinkedIn. So thank you.
Nancy, I wish you every success with your latest vision, and keep
Thank you.
doing your wonderful work, and transforming those lives. So thank you again. Take care.
Well, thank you, Brendan. This was really fun.